At my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law pulled the wedding ring off his hand and whispered to her lover, "I'll sell it so we can save up for the new car." I stayed silent until she found out that all the assets had been transferred to me. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. The funeral home was filled with the scent of lilies, Michael's favorite flower. I had insisted on them, despite Aurora's complaints about the cost. My son deserved this one last gesture of love, even if it was just flowers that would wither and die like he had. Too young, too soon. I sat in the front row, my black dress hanging loosely on my frame. I'd lost 15 pounds since Michael's diagnosis 6 months ago. My son, my only child, was gone at 42, leaving behind a hollowness in my chest. That felt physical, as if someone had carved out my heart with a dull spoon. The funeral director approached, his face a practiced mask of somber sympathy. "Mrs. Matthews, would you like a few moments alone with Michael before we close the casket?" I nodded, unable to form words past the knot in my throat. My legs felt like lead as I stood, steadying myself on the arm of the chair. The room was spinning. Slightly, reality still feeling like a cruel nightmare I couldn't wake from. Michael looked peaceful, at least. The pain that had contorted his face during those final weeks was gone. His hands were folded neatly over his chest, his wedding ring, glinting under the soft lights. That ring. I remembered the day he'd chosen it, how excited he'd been to marry Aurora. "She's the one, Mom," he'd said, his eyes bright with the kind of love that believes in forever. I touched his cold cheek, my tears falling onto his suit. "I love you, my sweet boy," I whispered. "I'll miss you every day for the rest of my life." The sound of heels clicking against the hardwood floor made me turn. Aurora stood there, her black designer dress hugging her slender figure, her makeup perfect despite the tissue she dabbed at dry eyes. Not once had I seen her truly cry since Michael had passed. "Joan, they need to close the casket now," she said, her voice carrying an edge of impatience. "Just one more minute," I pleaded. Aurora sighed but stepped back. I leaned down to kiss Michael's forehead one last time, then moved to the side of the room, my body suddenly too heavy to hold upright. I sank into a chair in the corner, feeling invisible in my grief. That's when I saw him, a tall man with dark hair I didn't recognize among the mourners. He stood near the entrance, his gaze fixed on Aurora. When she noticed him, something passed between them, a look of such intimate understanding that it made my breath catch. As people filed out for the reception, Aurora approached Michael's casket. I assumed she was saying her own private goodbye, and I was about to look away to give her that moment when I saw her hands move to his. With quick, practiced movements, she slipped the wedding ring from his finger. My heart stopped. Surely I was seeing things. But no. Aurora pocketed the ring and glanced around, not noticing me in the shadows of the corner. She walked briskly toward the man at the entrance. I forced myself to stand, moving closer on trembling legs until I could hear their whispered exchange. "Did you get it?" the man asked, his voice low. Aurora patted her pocket, a small smile playing on her lips. "Of course. It's platinum with diamonds. Should fetch a good price." "Perfect." He squeezed her arm. "That's another 3,000 toward the Mustang." "I'm thinking red," Aurora replied, her voice light as if they were discussing weekend plans rather than standing at my son's funeral. Michael always hated flashy cars, called them impractical. She rolled her eyes. "Well, he's not here to complain. Any more, is he?" the man said with a chuckle that sliced through me like a blade. I must have made a sound, a gasp or whimper, because they both turned suddenly. Aurora's face shifted instantly into a mask of grief. "Joan, this is Michael's colleague, David. He was just comforting me." I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no words came out. The room tilted and swayed around me as the full impact of what I'd witnessed crashed down. My son's body wasn't even cold, and his wife, the woman he had loved and trusted, had stolen his wedding ring to sell for a car with her lover. "You should sit down, Joan. You look faint," Aurora said, taking my arm with false concern. "The grief is too much for you." Grief? Yes, I was drowning in it, but now something else burned alongside it. A hot, sharp rage that stole my breath. But what could I say? How could I confront her here, now, with Michael lying there and people gathering to mourn him? So I stayed silent. I let her guide me back to my seat. I let her play the role of grieving widow while my mind replayed what I'd seen and heard, burning it into my memory like a brand. The funeral director closed the casket, and something in me closed too. A door locking on whatever warmth or trust I had left for the woman my son had married. What I didn't know then, what Aurora didn't know either, was that Michael had made arrangements. Arrangements that would change everything. But in that moment, all I knew was loss and betrayal, sitting heavy on my chest as they wheeled my son away from me forever. That night, back in the house I shared with Michael and Aurora, I lay awake, in my bed, the scene from the funeral home playing on endless loop in my mind. The casual way she'd slipped off his ring, the smile as she'd patted her pocket, the plans for a red Mustang purchased with the symbol of my son's love and commitment. And I wondered, with a chill that settled deep in my bones, what other secrets Aurora had been keeping while my son fought for his life. The weeks after Michael's funeral passed in a fog of grief. I moved through the house like a ghost, touching his things, sitting in his favorite chair, desperately trying to feel some connection to my son. Aurora, meanwhile, seemed to be recovering remarkably quickly. Her black mourning clothes were replaced by bright colors within days. Her phone constantly buzzed with messages that made her smile when she thought I wasn't looking. One evening, about 3 weeks after we buried Michael, I heard Aurora's car pull out of the driveway. She'd mentioned something about a grief support group, though I'd never seen any evidence of grief in her. The house fell into a heavy silence, the kind that makes you aware of every creak and whisper. I found myself wandering into Michael and Aurora's bedroom. I hadn't been in there since before the funeral. The bed was made, but not with Michael's military precision. His side, the right side, was already cleared of his belongings. His reading glasses, the stack of medical journals, the tube of hand. Cream he used for his dry skin, all gone. It was as if Aurora was erasing him piece by piece. I opened his closet and found it half empty, his suits and shirts already removed. Where had they gone? I ran my hand along the few remaining items, bringing a sweater to my face to breathe in his scent. But it smelled like detergent, not Michael. That's when I saw the shoebox on the top shelf, tucked behind Aurora's designer handbags. I reached for it, my arthritic fingers struggling with the lid. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Michael and Aurora in happier times, their honeymoon in Hawaii, holidays, birthdays. But as I flipped through them, I noticed something odd. The more recent the photo, the more strained Michael's smile became, the light in his eyes dimming year by year. At the bottom of the box was a smaller envelope. I opened it and felt my heart freeze in my chest. Photos of Aurora with the man from the funeral, David. They were embracing, kissing, their bodies entwined in ways that left no doubt about their relationship. The timestamps on the digital photos showed dates going back 3 years. 3 years, while Michael was still healthy, before the cancer had begun to ravage his body. My hands trembled as I checked the most recent photos. 2 months ago, when Michael was already bedridden, when I had moved in to help care for him. Aurora had been stepping out to clear her head or run errands, while my son lay dying. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the photos scattered around me like evidence at a crime scene. And in many ways, that's what it was. The murder of a marriage of trust, of vows spoken and broken. A drawer in the nightstand on Aurora's side was slightly ajar. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't. But my hand moved of its own accord, pulling it open further. Inside was a leather portfolio, bank statements, credit card bills, and a folder labeled M's treatment. Michael had excellent insurance through his job as a hospital administrator, but there were still substantial out-of-pocket costs for experimental treatments, medications not fully covered, and the special diet the oncologist had recommended. I had offered to help with my modest savings, but Aurora had insisted they were managing fine. The statements told a different story. Money withdrawn from their joint account, thousands of dollars, on the same days as appointments with specialists, that Michael had been too weak to attend alone. But the charges on their credit card for those days weren't medical facilities. They were luxury hotels, expensive restaurants, boutique shops. My vision blurred with tears of rage. While my son was dying, his wife was spending money meant for his treatment on rendezvous with her lover. I heard the front door open and quickly stuffed everything back into the drawer, replacing the shoebox on the shelf. I slipped out of the bedroom just as Aurora's heels clicked down the hallway. "Joan," she called, sounding annoyed to find me near their bedroom. "What are you doing up here?" I struggled to find a believable lie. Looking for one of Michael's old sweaters, for comfort. Her face softened into a practiced look of sympathy. "Oh, I already donated those to Goodwill. It's not healthy to cling to his things, Joan. The grief counselor says we need to move forward." "Donated?" Without asking me if I wanted anything of my son's. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "You're right," I managed, though the words tasted like ash. "I should get some rest." "Good idea," she said, already turning away, her phone buzzing again. "I'm heading out early tomorrow. Work thing." Aurora didn't work. She had quit her job as a dental hygienist when Michael got his promotion 3 years ago. The same time the affair had started, I now realized. That night, I lay awake again, pieces of a terrible puzzle falling into place. The late-night phone calls during Michael's illness that Aurora took in another room. The work friends who sent expensive flower arrangements but never visited. The way Michael would sometimes look at Aurora with a question in his eyes that she never answered. Had he known? Had my sweet, trusting son discovered his wife's betrayal while he was fighting for his life? The thought broke my heart all over again. The next morning, Aurora left before dawn, dressed in a form-fitting dress that was hardly appropriate for work. I waited until her car disappeared down the street, then went to Michael's home office, the one room Aurora rarely entered. His laptop was gone, but his filing cabinet remained. I found the spare key taped under his desk, just where he'd always kept it since he was a teenager with private journals to protect from his nosy mother. The cabinet was meticulously organized: medical records, house documents, insurance policies. In the back of the bottom drawer, I found a folder labeled simply A. Inside were screenshots of text messages between Aurora and David, dating back almost 4 years. Hotel receipts. A credit card statement showing charges for lingerie and champagne on the anniversary of Michael's diagnosis, and a single handwritten note from my son. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to burden you while I was sick. I've made arrangements. The lawyer will explain everything. I love you. Always have. Always will." The paper crumpled in my shaking hands as tears blurred my vision. Michael had known. He had discovered Aurora's betrayal and kept it from me to spare me additional pain while he was ill. But what arrangements had he made? And why was he apologizing to me? The sound of the front door opening startled me. Aurora wasn't supposed to be back until evening. I quickly replaced the folder and closed the cabinet, wiping my tears as I hurried from the office. In the hallway, I nearly collided with David, the man from the funeral, Aurora's lover, carrying a suitcase from the guest room. Mrs. Matthews, he said, clearly surprised to see me. I thought you were at your, book club today. I didn't have a book club. Aurora had lied to him, too. I live here, I said simply, my voice steadier than I expected. Where are you taking... That? Aurora asked me to help move some things. His eyes shifted away from mine. For donation. Another lie. I recognized the suitcase. It had been Michael's, the one he took on overnight hospital trips during his treatment. The one where he kept his journal, his tablet, his personal items. That's my son's, I said. Put it back. David hesitated, looking past me toward the front door. I turned to see Aurora standing there, her face flushed with anger and something else. Fear. Joan, she said, her voice honeyed, but her eyes cold. I told you we need to clear out his things, for closure. As if my son were a chapter in a book to be finished and forgotten. In that moment, I saw Aurora clearly for perhaps the first time. Not as my daughter-in-law, not as Michael's beloved wife, but as the predator she truly was. And I realized with a chill that spread through my entire body that she wasn't done taking from us yet. The confrontation in the hallway ended with David reluctantly returning Michael's suitcase to the guest room. Aurora had smiled tightly, her eyes flashing with barely concealed rage. We'll sort through it together later, Joan, she'd said, her tone making it clear there would be no discussion. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes in Aurora's behavior toward me. The pretense of caring daughter-in-law slipped away more with each passing day. She forgot to tell me when dinner was ready. The thermostat in my room mysteriously got turned down at night. Small things, easily explained away, but I recognized them for what they were, the beginning of a campaign to push me out. I had been living with Michael and Aurora for nearly 3 years, ever since Robert, my husband of 40 years, passed, away from a heart attack. Michael had insisted I sell my house and move in with them. Mom, that place is too big for you now. We have plenty of room and I'd feel better knowing you're not alone. Now, I wondered if Aurora had resented that decision all along, tolerating me only because Michael wanted me there. One evening, about a month after the funeral, I was sitting in the small sunroom off the kitchen, looking through old photo albums of Michael as a child. It had become my nightly ritual, a way to feel close to him. Through the partially open door, I heard Aurora on the phone. The old lady is becoming a problem, she was saying, her voice low but clear enough to carry. She found some of Michael's things I was trying to clear out. No, I don't think she knows about us, but she's always watching me with those sad, accusing eyes. A pause. Then, we need to move faster. The house is worth at least $750,000 in this market. Once it's sold, we can... She lowered her voice, moving further away so I could only catch fragments. Retirement account, life insurance, Florida. My blood ran cold. Aurora was planning to sell the house, my home, the place where I had my last memories of Michael. And from the sound of it, she intended to take everything my son had worked for and start a new life with her lover. I sat frozen, the photo album trembling in my hands. A picture of 10-year-old Michael grinned up at me, missing his front teeth, eyes bright with childhood innocence. He had been such a trusting boy, always seeing the best in everyone. That quality had never left him, even as an adult. Even, I now realized, with Aurora. I can't just kick her out, Aurora continued as she walked back into earshot. It would look bad. People already think I'm moving on too quickly. But if she decided to leave on her own? Another pause. Exactly. Make her uncomfortable enough, and she'll go running to that sister of hers in Arizona. My sister Elaine had indeed offered to have me come stay with her after Michael's death, but I had declined, not wanting to leave the home where I felt closest to my son. Give me a few weeks, Aurora was saying. By summer, this will all be ours. The call ended, and I heard her heels clicking across the kitchen floor. I quickly wiped my tears and pretended to be absorbed in the photo album when she appeared at the sunroom door. Still up, Joan? Aurora leaned against the doorframe, a glass of red wine in her hand. It's nearly midnight. Just looking at some old pictures, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded despite the storm raging inside me. Aurora glanced at the photo album with disinterest. You should really consider what you're going to do long-term, Joan. This house. It's full of memories of Michael. It can't be healthy for you to stay here, surrounding yourself with ghosts. This is my home, I said simply. Aurora's smile didn't reach her eyes. It was Michael's home. And mine. And now that he's gone, well, I'm thinking of making some changes. Moving somewhere smaller, perhaps. I see. I closed the album carefully, my hands steady despite my racing heart. And when were you planning to discuss this with me? I'm discussing it now. Aurora took a sip of wine. I'm thinking of listing the house next month. The market's good right now. And where am I supposed to go? I asked, though I already knew her answer. Didn't Elaine invite you to Arizona? That would be perfect for you. Warm weather, no stairs to climb, other seniors to socialize with. She spoke as if she were offering me a wonderful opportunity, not casting me aside like an unwanted pet. I'll think about it, I said, standing slowly. The arthritis in my knees made every movement painful, a fact Aurora well knew. She had counted on my physical limitations to make me dependent, less likely to fight back. Don't think too long, Aurora said, her voice hardening slightly. I've already spoken to a realtor. They're coming next week to take photos. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone among the memories of my son. That night I lay awake in bed, Aurora's plans echoing in my head. I had no legal claim to the house. I knew that. It had been purchased after Michael and Aurora were married, both names on the deed. With Michael gone, the property would naturally go to his wife. Unless a memory surfaced, sharp and clear. Michael's note in the folder. I've made arrangements. The lawyer will explain everything. What arrangements? And who was the lawyer? Michael had never mentioned any legal preparations to me. The next morning, I waited until Aurora left for her yoga class, which I now assumed was a rendezvous with David, before returning to Michael's office. I searched through his contacts, his calendar looking for any mention of a lawyer or legal appointments. Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed a business card tucked into the frame of the family photo on his desk. James Peterson, attorney at law, with a phone number. My hands shaking, I dialed the number. Peterson Law Offices, a friendly female. Voice answered. Yes, hello, I said, suddenly unsure how to proceed. My name is Joan Matthews. My son was Michael Matthews. He passed away last month. A pause. Mrs. Matthews, yes. We've been expecting your call. Mr. Peterson has been trying to reach you, but the number we had seems to be disconnected. My old cell phone. I'd forgotten. To pay the bill in the chaos following Michael's death. And Aurora had helpfully suggested I cancel the service since I hardly used it anyway. I'm sorry about that, I said. Michael left a note saying I should speak with his lawyer. Is that Mr. Peterson? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Peterson handled your son's affairs. He asked me to set up an appointment immediately when you called. Would tomorrow, at 10, be possible? Tomorrow. Aurora had a standing hair appointment on Thursdays. She wouldn't even know I was gone. Yes, I said, feeling a flutter of something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Tomorrow at 10 would be perfect. As I hung up the phone, I glanced at the family photo in the frame. Michael was smiling, his arm around Aurora, me standing beside them. We looked happy, normal. But appearances could be deceiving, as I was learning in the most painful way possible. What had my son done? What arrangements had he made in his final months? And would it be enough to stop Aurora's plans to discard me like yesterday's trash? The next morning, I dressed carefully in my navy blue pantsuit, the one I'd worn to Michael's college graduation, then to his wedding, and finally to his funeral. Aurora barely glanced up from her phone as I mentioned I was going out to meet an old friend for coffee. She seemed pleased, if anything, to have me out of the house. Mr. Peterson's office was in a modest building downtown, nothing flashy but professional and well-maintained. The receptionist, the same friendly voice from the phone, led me to a comfortable conference room where a man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes stood to greet me. "Mrs. Matthews, I'm James Peterson. I'm so sorry for your loss. Michael spoke of you often and with great affection." His sincere tone brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I managed. "You knew my son well?" "We went to law school together, though I finished and he switched to healthcare administration," Mr. Peterson explained, gesturing for me to sit. "We remained friends. He reached out to me about 8 months ago to update his will and make some other arrangements." 8 months ago? Just before his diagnosis? "What kind of arrangements?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Mr. Peterson opened a folder on the table. "Mrs. Matthews, did you know that Michael had suspicions about his wife's fidelity?" The blunt question startled me. I recently discovered evidence," I admitted. "But I didn't know Michael was aware." Mr. Peterson nodded solemnly. "Michael hired a private investigator last year after finding some concerning text messages on Aurora's phone. The investigator confirmed his suspicions. Aurora had been involved in an extramarital relationship for several years. My heart ached for my son, carrying that knowledge alone. Why didn't he leave her? He was considering it, Mr. Peterson said. But then came the cancer diagnosis. Michael decided not to add divorce proceedings to his battle with illness. However, he was determined to protect his assets, and you. He slid several documents across the table. About 6 months ago, Michael transferred ownership of the house to a trust he established in your name. He also transferred his retirement accounts, life insurance policy, and most of his other assets to this trust, with you as the sole beneficiary. I stared at the papers, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. But the house, Aurora's name, is on the deed. It was, Mr. Peterson confirmed. But Michael added a clause when they purchased it giving him the right to buy out her share. He exercised that right and paid her for her half, which she accepted without reading the fine print. The house is now entirely owned by the Joan Matthews Living Trust. My hands trembled as I touched the documents. She doesn't know. No. Michael kept these arrangements private. He didn't want to deal with her reaction during his illness. A bitter laugh escaped me. She's been planning to sell the house, to take everything and leave me with nothing. Mr. Peterson's expression hardened. She has no legal right to sell the property. In fact, according to the terms of the trust, she has 60 days from Michael's death to vacate the premises unless you, as trustee, permit her to stay. 60 days! We were already halfway through that period. There's more, Mr. Peterson continued, drawing out another document. Michael left a letter for you, with instructions that I should give it to you when you came to see me. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Michael's familiar handwriting. I broke the seal with shaking fingers and unfolded the single page inside. Mom, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've discovered the truth about Aurora. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what was happening. I wanted to protect you from this pain, and I needed to focus on my treatments, not a messy divorce. I've known about Aurora's affair for over a year. The betrayal nearly broke me, but it also opened my eyes. I realized that the woman I married never truly loved me. She loved what I could provide. I couldn't bear the thought of her taking everything I worked for and leaving you vulnerable. You gave me everything, Mom. You sacrificed so much to raise me alone after Dad left. Now it's my turn to take care of you. The house is yours. My savings, my investments, My insurance? It's all in your hands now. Aurora gets nothing beyond what the law requires I leave to a spouse, which isn't much given our short marriage and the arrangements I've made. Don't let her manipulate you with guilt or fake grief. She showed her true colors long ago. I just wish I had seen them sooner. I love you, Mom. I hope these arrangements give you security and peace in the years ahead. Live well, be happy. That's all I ever wanted. Your loving son, Michael. Tears streamed down my face as I read his words. Even dying, Michael had been thinking of me, protecting me. Mr. Peterson quietly passed me a box of tissues. There's one. More thing, he said gently when I had composed myself. The real estate agent Aurora contacted? They called me yesterday, as I'm listed as the legal representative for the property. They were quite surprised to learn that Aurora has no authority to sell the house. I looked up, suddenly understanding. So she already knows? Not yet. I informed the agent that the rightful owner would be in touch, but I didn't specify who that owner is. I thought you might want to handle that conversation yourself. A strange calm settled over me. For weeks, I had felt powerless. At Aurora's. Mercy. Now, the tables had turned. What happens now? I asked. That's entirely up to you, Mrs. Matthews. You can ask Aurora to leave immediately, or give her more time. You can sell the house if you wish, or continue living there. The trust gives. You complete control. Complete control. The words echoed in my mind. Michael had given me back the power Aurora had tried to take away. There's a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, Mr. Peterson continued. Aurora requested it to discuss the sale of the house. I took the liberty of arranging for it to be held here. In my office. Will you attend? Tomorrow. The day Aurora planned to set her plans in motion. The day she expected to begin the process of discarding me and everything that remained of Michael's legacy. Yes, I said, a new strength in my voice. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As I left Mr. Peterson's office, clutching the folder of documents and Michael's letter close to my chest, I felt my son's presence more strongly than I had since his death. He hadn't abandoned me. Even in his final months, suffering and betrayed, he had been thinking ahead, laying the groundwork to protect me. Aurora had no idea what was coming. She thought she had all the power, that I was just a grieving, fragile old woman she could manipulate and discard. She had underestimated me, and more importantly, she had underestimated my son's love for his mother. I returned to the house. My house, I now realized with a surge of emotion, to find Aurora in the kitchen with a tall, polished-looking woman in a business suit. "Joan, there you are," Aurora said with false brightness. "This is Monica Winters from Elite Realty. We were just discussing staging options for the house." Monica extended her hand. "Mrs. Matthews, pleasure to meet you. I was telling Aurora that this property could sell very quickly in the current market." I shook her hand, smiling calmly. "How interesting. Will you be at the meeting tomorrow at Mr. Peterson's office?" Aurora's smile froze. "What meeting? Who is Mr. Peterson?" "Michael's attorney," I said, watching her face carefully. "There seems to be some confusion about the house. The meeting is at 10 a.m. I assumed you knew about it." Aurora's complexion paled slightly. No. No one told me about any meeting." "Well, I'm sure it's just a formality," I said, still smiling. "You'll be there, won't you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Of course. I'll call David. He knows real estate law. He can come with me." "Wonderful," I said, turning to go upstairs. The merrier. That night, I slept better than I had since Michael's diagnosis. Tomorrow would bring a reckoning Aurora never saw coming. And while I took no joy in her impending shock, I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Michael had protected me one last time, and now it was my turn to protect his legacy from the woman who had betrayed him in the worst possible way. The Next morning, Aurora was unusually quiet as we drove to Mr. Peterson's office. She had dressed carefully in a sleek black pantsuit, her power outfit. I recognized from the times she'd worn it to Michael's medical appointments when decisions needed to be made. David met us in the parking lot, all confidence in his expensive suit and leather briefcase. "Don't worry," he murmured to Aurora as we walked into the building, not bothering to lower his voice. "This is probably just some minor paperwork issue. We'll sort it out." I said nothing, letting them believe I was just a confused old woman along for the ride. The receptionist recognized me and smiled warmly. "Mrs. Matthews, Mr. Peterson is expecting you. Please go right in." Aurora frowned at the familiarity, but followed me into the conference room where Mr. Peterson stood waiting. A young woman sat beside him with a laptop open, likely a legal assistant. "Mrs. Matthews, good to see you again," Mr. Peterson said, shaking my hand before turning to Aurora with considerably less warmth. "Mrs. Matthews, thank you for coming." Aurora's eyes flickered between us. "Again? You two have met before?" "Yesterday," I confirmed calmly, taking a seat. Aurora's composure slipped momentarily before she recovered, gesturing to David. "This is David Reynolds, my friend. He has experience in real estate law." "How convenient," Mr. Peterson remarked dryly, not extending his hand. "Please sit down." Once we were all seated, Mr. Peterson opened a folder identical to the one he had given me the day before. "We're here to discuss the status of the property at 1742 Maple Avenue, currently occupied by both Mrs. Joan Matthews and Mrs. Aurora Matthews." "Yes?" Aurora leaned forward, all business. "I've decided to sell the property. As Michael's widow, the house passes to me, and I'm afraid that's not accurate," Mr. Peterson interrupted, his tone professional but firm. "The property in question is owned by the Joan Matthews Living Trust, established by Michael Matthews 6 months ago." Aurora blinked, the information clearly not registering. "What are you talking about?" "My name is on the deed. Michael and I bought that house together." "Initially, yes," Mr. Peterson agreed. "However, Michael exercised the buyout clause in your joint ownership agreement last year. He purchased your half of the property and transferred complete ownership to the trust." David leaned forward, his lawyer persona taking over. "That's impossible. Aurora would have had to sign documents agreeing to that transfer." Mr. Peterson slid a document across the table. "She did. Right here, dated September 15th of last year." Aurora snatched the paper, her eyes scanning frantically before finding her own signature at the bottom. This was for refinancing the house. Michael said we needed better terms on our mortgage. The document clearly states it's a buyout. "Agreement," Mr. Peterson countered. "The terms are explicit. You received $175,000 for your share of the property." Aurora's face flushed. "He tricked me. I never would have signed if I'd known." "If you'd known you couldn't sell it out from under his mother after he died?" I finally spoke, my voice quiet but cutting. "Is that what you mean, Aurora?" Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide with the sudden realization that I knew far more than she had assumed. "Joan, this isn't what it looks like. Michael and I had discussions about downsizing eventually. I'm only doing what he would have wanted." "Please don't lie to me anymore," I said, the weariness of months of deception heavy in my voice. "I know about David. I know about the affair. I've known since the funeral." The color drained from Aurora's face. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you take Michael's wedding ring," I said, the memory still sharp and painful. "I heard you and David planning to sell it for a car. A red Mustang, wasn't it?" David shifted uncomfortably. Aurora's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. "And that was just the beginning," I continued, finding strength in finally speaking the truth. "I found the photos, Aurora. I saw the credit card statements showing hotel rooms and restaurants while Michael was dying. I know you used money meant for his treatments to fund your affair." "You went through my things?" Aurora's shock transformed to indignation. How dare you? They were my son's things, I corrected her. Things you were planning to dispose of, along with me. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. To return to the legal matters at hand, the house and most of Michael's other assets are now the property of Mrs. Joan Matthews, as the sole beneficiary and trustee of the living trust. Aurora, you have received the spousal portion required by law, the $175,000 buyout and the joint checking account. Everything else belongs to Joan. David's confident demeanor had vanished. This can't be right. What about the life insurance? The retirement accounts? All transferred to the trust before Michael's death, Mr. Peterson confirmed. Perfectly legal and binding. Aurora's face contorted with rage. He had no right. I was his wife. A wife who was cheating on him while he was dying, I said softly. A wife who couldn't even wait until his body was cold before stealing his wedding ring to sell it. The room fell silent. Aurora stared at me, her perfectly maintained facade crumbling before my eyes. You knew? She finally whispered. At the funeral you saw? I nodded, the pain of that moment still fresh. I saw everything, Aurora. I heard everything. She turned to Mr. Peterson, desperation replacing anger. This can't be legal. He can't just cut me out like this. I assure you it's entirely legal, Mr. Peterson replied. Michael consulted with several specialists to ensure these arrangements would stand up to any challenge. You received your legal portion. The rest was his to allocate as he wished. Aurora stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. I'm not accepting this. You don't have to accept it, Mr. Peterson said calmly. But it is the legal reality, and according to the terms of the trust, you have 30 more days to vacate the property, unless Mrs. Matthews chooses to allow you to stay longer. All eyes turned to me. I met Aurora's gaze steadily. I think 30 days is more than generous, considering your plans for me. What plans? Aurora attempted innocence, but her eyes betrayed her. I heard you on the phone, I said. Discussing how to make me uncomfortable enough to leave, calling me the old lady, planning your new life in Florida with the proceeds from selling my home. David touched Aurora's arm. We should go. We need to consult with our own attorney. Aurora shook him off, leaning across the table toward me. You think you've won? You're nothing but a sad, lonely old woman clinging to her dead son's memory. This isn't over. I didn't flinch from her venom. You're right about one thing, Aurora. I am clinging to my son's memory, but thanks to him, I'm neither sad nor lonely. I'm protected. Aurora grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, David following close behind. At the threshold, she turned back, her eyes cold with hatred. Enjoy the empty house, Joan. Enjoy talking to ghosts. After they left, Mr. Peterson offered me a glass of water. Are you all right, Mrs. Matthews? That was intense. I took a deep breath, surprised to find I felt more relieved than shaken. I'm fine. Better than I've been in months, actually. Aurora may try to contest the trust, he warned, though I assure you her chances of success are minimal. Let her try, I said, gathering my things. Michael thought of everything. He always did. As I drove home, truly my home now, I felt Michael's presence beside me. Not as a ghost, as Aurora had cruelly suggested, but as a continuing force of love in my life. He had given me not just financial security, but also the truth, painful as it was. He had freed me from Aurora's manipulation and lies. When I arrived, Aurora's car was already in the driveway. I found her in the bedroom she had shared with Michael, pulling clothes from the closet and throwing them into suitcases. You don't need to leave today, I said from the doorway. You have 30 days. I'm not staying in this house another night, she spat, not looking at me. Not with you. I watched her for a moment, This woman my son had loved. This stranger who had betrayed him so completely. "Where is it?" I asked quietly. Aurora paused, a handful of silk blouses clutched in her fist. "Where's what?" "Michael's wedding ring. The one you took at the funeral." She turned slowly, her expression guarded. "Why? It's just a piece of metal." "It was a symbol of his love," I said. "A love that meant something to him, even if it didn't to you." Aurora stared at me for a long moment, then reached into her jewelry box on the dresser. She pulled out the platinum band, holding it tightly in her palm before extending it toward me. "Take it," she said flatly. "It's worthless to me now anyway." I accepted the ring, feeling its weight in my hand, heavier than it looked, just like the burden of truth I now carried. "Goodbye, Aurora," I said, turning to leave her to her packing. "Joan," she called after me, her voice suddenly uncertain. "Did he know about David and me while he was sick?" I paused at the door, considering whether to give her this last piece of information, whether knowing would hurt or help her. "Yes," I finally said. "He knew everything." The sound of her sharp intake of breath followed me down the hallway as I walked away. Michael's ring clutched tightly in my hand. The last piece of him finally returned to where it belonged. Aurora left that same day, taking only her clothes and personal items. David's sleek black car pulled up as evening fell, and they loaded her suitcases without speaking to me. I watched from the kitchen window as they drove away, feeling neither triumph nor bitterness, only a profound sense of closure. In the days that followed, I moved through the house with new purpose, reclaiming spaces that had been dominated by Aurora's presence. I changed the bedding in the master bedroom, replaced Aurora's modern art with family photos, and filled the refrigerator with foods I enjoyed rather than the trendy health foods she had insisted upon. Mr. Peterson called a week later to inform me that Aurora had indeed consulted another attorney, but had been advised that challenging the trust would be costly and unlikely to succeed. "She's dropped the matter," he told me. "Signed the final paperwork acknowledging the terms. You shouldn't have any more trouble from her." "Thank you, James," I said, having switched to a first-name basis with the man who had become not just my attorney but a friend. "Michael chose well when he turned to you." "Your son was a remarkable man," James replied. "Smart, thoughtful, and he loved you very much." After we hung up, I sat in Michael's office, now my office, and looked at the photograph still on the desk. I removed it from the frame and carefully cut Aurora out of the picture, leaving just Michael and me. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about focusing on what was real. The love between mother and son had been real. The rest had been illusion. 3 months after Aurora's departure, I was arranging fresh flowers in the living room when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a young woman with a familiar face standing on my porch. "Mrs. Matthews?" "Joan?" she said hesitantly. "I'm Rachel, Michael's nurse from the oncology center. I don't know if you remember me." "Of course I do," I said warmly, recognizing the gentle-faced woman who had shown such kindness to Michael during his treatments. "Please come in." Rachel stepped inside, clutching a small gift bag. "I've been meaning to come by. I wanted to give you something, but I wasn't sure if it was the right time. Then I heard Aurora had moved away, and I thought." She extended the bag to me. "Michael gave this to me for safekeeping about a week before he passed. He made me promise not to tell Aurora and to give it to you when the time was right." My hands trembled as I accepted the bag. Inside was a small velvet box. I opened it to find a delicate gold locket on a chain. "He said it was a gift for your birthday," Rachel explained. "He knew he wouldn't be here to give it to you himself." I opened the locket with unsteady fingers. Inside was a tiny photo of Michael as a child on one side and as an adult on the other. Inscribed on the back were the words, "Love is eternal." Tears filled my eyes. "My birthday is next week," he remembered. Rachel smiled softly. He thought of everything. Would you like some tea? I asked, suddenly not wanting to be alone with my emotions. Rachel accepted, and as we sat in the kitchen, she shared stories about Michael from his time at the treatment center, his kindness to other patients, his unwavering optimism, his endless talk about his mother. He was so proud of you, Rachel said. He told me how you raised him alone after his father left, how you worked 2 jobs to put him through college, how you never complained even when things were tough. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear these stories, these pieces of Michael I hadn't been present for. Aurora rarely visited during his treatments, Rachel continued, a hint of disapproval in her voice. But he always made excuses for her. She's busy with work, he'd say, or she gets emotional seeing me like this. I nodded, remembering how Aurora had always found reasons to skip the more difficult appointments. He protected her, even then. That's who he was, Rachel agreed. Always protecting others. As Rachel was leaving, she hesitated at the door. I hope you don't mind me asking, but what will you do now? Will you stay in this house? I looked around at the home Michael had created, now transformed into my own space. Yes, I'm staying. This is where I feel closest to him. I'm glad, Rachel said. Too many people run from grief. It takes courage to stay and make peace with it. After she left, I stood in the center of the living room, the locket warm in my palm. Michael had thought of everything, not just legal protections, but this final birthday gift, this tangible piece of his love for me. 6 months after Michael's death, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Caroline, my neighbor from 3 houses down. We had been close once, but Aurora had discouraged the friendship, calling Caroline nosy and common. Now Caroline stood on my porch with a casserole dish and a tentative smile. I've missed you, Joan, she said simply. I thought maybe we could have lunch sometime? That lunch led to more book club meetings at my house, movie nights with other neighbors, volunteer work at the local hospital. Slowly, my world expanded beyond the grief that had defined it for so long. One evening, as I was sorting through Michael's books, I found a journal tucked between medical texts. Opening it, I recognized my son's handwriting. I've made the arrangements with James. Mom will be taken care of. It's strange, knowing I won't be here but planning for it anyway. I keep thinking about what life has taught me. That love isn't always what it seems. That betrayal hurts but doesn't have to destroy you. That my mother's love was the only constant I could ever truly count on. If there's any silver lining to this illness, it's the clarity it brings. I see Aurora for who she truly is now, and I see Mom for the incredible woman she's always been. I can't protect Mom from the pain of losing me, but I can protect her from everything else. And I will. I closed the journal, pressing it to my chest. Even in his darkest hours, Michael had been thinking of me, seeing me not as a burden or an afterthought, but as someone worthy of protection and care. A year to the day after Michael's death, I invited James, Rachel, Caroline, and a few other friends for a small gathering. Not a memorial service, we'd had enough sorrow, but a celebration of life. My life, continuing. Michael's life, remembered with joy rather than anguish. As my guests mingled in the backyard, I slipped away briefly, to my bedroom. From my jewelry box, I took out 2 rings, my own wedding band from my marriage to Robert, and Michael's ring that Aurora had returned. I had spent weeks deciding what to do with them, these symbols of love both fulfilled and betrayed. That morning, I had visited a jeweler who specialized in custom pieces. I handed him both rings and commissioned a new piece, a pendant that would incorporate the gold from both bands, shaped like 2 overlapping hearts. Something new from something old. A transformation. Back at the party, Caroline handed me a glass of wine. You seem lighter today, Joan. At peace. I touched the locket at my throat, thinking of the new pendant that would soon join it. I am. It's been a long journey. What changed? She asked. I considered the question, looking around at the people who had become my chosen family. I stopped letting other people define my worth, I said finally. Michael always saw me clearly, my strength, my value. It just took me longer to see it in myself. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, I sat in the garden Michael had planted, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The house behind me was quiet, but no longer empty. It was filled with memories, yes, but also with possibilities. Aurora had been wrong that day in James's office. I wasn't a sad, lonely old woman clinging to ghosts. I was a woman who had weathered betrayal and loss and emerged stronger. A woman who had learned that the most important protection isn't found in legal documents or financial security, but in knowing your own worth. I touched the locket again, feeling Michael's presence not as a haunting, but as a foundation. He had given me more than a house and financial security. He had given me the truth, painful as it was, and the freedom to rebuild. In the twilight of that garden, with the scent of Michael's roses surrounding me, I made a silent promise to my son. I would live fully. I would find joy. I would honor his final gift not by dwelling in sorrow, but by embracing every day as precious. Aurora had taken my son's ring, thinking she could steal and sell the symbol of his love. But she had failed to understand the most fundamental truth. Real love can't be stolen, sold, or diminished. It remains, outlasting betrayal, transcending death, transforming pain into strength. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, I whispered words meant only for Michael and myself. Thank you for protecting me one last time. Now it's my turn to protect your memory by living a life worthy of your love. The night air seemed to wrap around me like an embrace, and for the first time since losing Michael, I felt not just resignation or acceptance, but genuine peace. Aurora had taken what she thought was valuable, material things, status, the appearance of respectability. But she had missed the true treasure, the unbreakable bond between a mother and son, a love that even death couldn't diminish. In the end, that was the greatest revelation of all, that love, true love, needs no alliance, no ring, no symbol to endure. It simply is and always will be the most powerful force in the world. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.